Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're watching this. Today's case is the case of Malcolm Naden, and I just want to thank my friend Dave, as Dave recommended this case to me today. I also just want to shout Dave out because Dave has been a supporter of this channel since day one. Dave also helped me get past 1,000 subscribers a few months ago, so thank you so much, Dave. This case is really difficult. It has been really difficult to research. And through a very quick search on YouTube, I could not find another video like this on Malcolm Naden. And I think there's a reason why. So the crime of Malcolm Naden is very well known, but Malcolm Naden's history is not. So I apologise in advance for the lack of information about before the crime. This case is a wild one, so do prepare yourselves. And just a quick one before I start this video, but if you like the content you see on this channel, please do like, comment and subscribe. All of those free things allow this video and others to be shown to more people in the YouTube community. And if you already do this, because I know that some of you already do, thank you so much. Right, let's get into today's case. Malcolm Naden was born on the 5th of November 1973. His parents are Richard Naden and Shirley Naden, and he has a brother called Jason. It's said that Malcolm was a loner, and he never went out and never made any friends. Like I say, there isn't too much on Malcolm Naden in his early years, but apparently at the age of 12, he told his family that he wanted to be a serial killer. And at some point in Malcolm Naden's life, he became an abattoir worker. He also grew up near the bush in Australia, so Malcolm, his dad and his brother would often go out and test their hunting skills. But unfortunately, beyond that, there is really not much more about Malcolm Naden's history. All I could find is that he was very quiet, he kept to himself, he really didn't have any friends, but it is said that he was very good at hunting. So he and his family grew up and lived in Dubbo in Australia. And in 2004, there was an allegation that Naden had indecently assaulted a 12-year-old girl. Nothing really came of this, nothing really happened, and people didn't know if it was true or not. However, those in his family speculated that it was. So we are jumping straight into the crime. So Naden's family was quite big, and although his immediate family was just Malcolm, Richard, Shirley and Jason, he had a few cousins that lived around the same place too. One of his cousins was called Letitia, and Letitia had 4 children. There is reports that Letitia really got on well with Malcolm, but there's other reports that Letitia was really scared of him. So the truth of what I'm about to say next is questioned by the family. But in January 2005, it is said that Letitia offered Malcolm a lift to go fishing. Now, the fishing place from where they lived was not far. It was about a 10-minute drive, if that. And somewhere within this 10-minute drive, apparently Letitia asked Malcolm about the 12-year-old girl. Malcolm is in the back seat, and he's not showing it via his voice, but he's really, really angry that this has come up because he is considering this gossip, and it is said that Malcolm hated gossip. So although he didn't let it show, he just kind of avoided the question and let them get to their destination. But all the while, Malcolm is in the back seat, really, really furious at Letitia. Malcolm would later say that he did keep calm on purpose and he didn't show any rage in his face. He later wrote in a confession, "Poor Letitia. Didn't even see it coming. She didn't know death was travelling with us and that it would take her that night." His written confession was incredibly detailed, and the detective said it was more like a novel than a normal confession. They said the way that he wrote his statement was unusual and shocking. So once Letitia and Malcolm had reached Sandy Beach, Letitia went to let Naden out of the car, and when she did this, he grabbed her and strangled her. She didn't have time to take a breath, she didn't have time to speak, and she didn't have time to beg for her life. Her struggle had only lasted a few moments, and Naden had killed her. This is why he remained quiet and calm in the car, because he knew that when they pulled up, he could reach from the back into the front, grab her by the neck, and kill her. After taking her life, he said that he sat in the back of the car just looking at her. He said she looked peaceful, quiet, and empty. He said that he'd never seen a body look so relaxed, not even in sleep. Now, Letitia's aunt does not believe this side of Malcolm's story at all. She says that Letitia would have never offered Malcolm a lift. because she never wanted to be close to him, especially in a confined space such as a car. So Letitia's aunt believes that she was forced into the car and forced to take him to this location. Malcolm knew that he had to hide Letitia's body. He put Letitia's body in the passenger seat, drove away from the fishing spot a few miles up the road to Butler's Falls. The courts have said that this next part is so truly disturbing that they have actually hidden the extensive truth of this. So no one but Malcolm and the courts will ever know exactly what happened at this point. It was nighttime and Malcolm decides to get out of the car and just sit by it. He decides to take in the scenery and discover how silent and beautiful the nighttime is. Whilst he's doing this, he also then decides to look at Letitia and stares at her. This is again when Malcolm realises just how beautiful his cousin is. He realises in this moment that he's never actually looked at her for this long before. He sits for a while, but then he realises he has to dispose of Letitia's body. So to do this, he dismembers her and gets rid of the evidence in a multitude of ways. He buries certain body parts and uses the lake to get rid of others. Another piece of evidence to get rid of was the car. And he thought that by leaving the car there, he would be giving away the location of Letitia's body to anyone who came to find her. So he decided to take the car back to Sandy Beach and walk home from there. And how vile is this? So he later confessed that that night he slept like the dead. That is a direct quote from Malcolm. After killing his cousin and then getting rid of the evidence in such a horrific way, he slept like the dead. And it gets worse because the next day he was actually awoken by children's laughter, and he then suddenly realised this was Letitia's orphaned children. In this moment he said he felt no remorse. Letitia's family searched so hard for her, and they searched everywhere, even places that she physically couldn't be. But they would search every place they could just in case she was there. Letitia's aunt said that Malcolm was cold and he never wanted to look for her. In June 2005, just 6 months after Letitia's murder, Malcolm would strike again. In his bedroom, he would strangle 24-year-old Christy Scholes. Naden would later say that he had absolutely no reason for strangling and killing Christy. It was just in that moment he wanted to take her life. After he took her life, he then clothed her and placed her on his bed between the pillows like a doll. He would then flee the scene and lead the police on a statewide search for the next 6.5 years. I just want to apologise for knowing very little about Letitia and Christy. There is always more information about the killer than there is the victims. But even in this case, it was incredibly hard to find out anything about Malcolm, except his chase and capture, which we will now go into. On the same day that he murdered Christy, he went on the run. The police did not find Christy's body until 2 days later, and they also then discovered that Malcolm was missing. They concluded that he was now the main suspect for Christy's murder, and in August an arrest warrant was issued for Malcolm. The police would have tip-offs to Malcolm's whereabouts, and they would sometimes catch up to him, but each and every time he would evade capture. In December 2005 and February 2006, the police swarmed on his location, but both times he evaded capture. In October of 2006, they now had no idea where Malcolm was. In January 2007, they realised that they could gain the public's attention on this case if they offered a $50,000 reward. This reward would be given to anyone that could give information on Malcolm Naden's whereabouts. And this was the last noted date until February 2011. It was at this point that the police then decided to double the reward from $50,000 to $100,000. This was the first bounty since 1879. In December of 2011, the police managed to catch up to Malcolm again, but this time they found him at a campsite, and Malcolm has now got a weapon, and he uses this weapon to shoot a police officer in the arm before escaping. 2 days after the police officer was shot, the now police are more determined than ever to find Malcolm, so they decide to increase the reward to $250,000. By this point, the police had done everything they could to try and track him down. This included placing motion sensors in the Hunter Valley bush cabins. They had wasted so much police time and police money to try and find Malcolm. So they hoped that by offering this massive reward, they would finally be able to capture Malcolm Naden. The manhunt cost taxpayers millions of dollars, and Malcolm Naden survived by breaking into people's homes and stealing food, clothing, and weapons. But he didn't just steal off of the public, he also stole off of zoos. You heard me right. Zoos, like animal captivity. Naden broke into Dabo's Western Plains Zoo in December 2005. And for food, he used his skills that he learnt from hunting and working at an abattoir and killed kangaroos to survive. Naden also stole bananas from elephants, he rummaged the bins at the zoo, and slept in the roof of a hut on zoo grounds as he evaded police in those early days on the run. When his food supply was cut off, he tore off the head of a Galapagos tortoise and ate its insides. What a guy. A private investigator known as Mike has insight to Malcolm Naden's capture. He got information after hearing one of the cleaners describe a man who he believed could be Naden. He then realised that he could be close into capturing him. I will add a part of a book with his insight here. I spent all the next day at the zoo, first having the culvert beside the main entrance welded shut so no one could get through it. Then we laid fishing line across some of the main footpads. It wouldn't trap him, but I'd know if he'd been using that trail. By the evening, Roger and I were bushed and hungry, so around 10:40 p.m. we left the zoo and headed for the Dubbo KFC. We were almost there when Roger got an alarm alert on his phone. We U-turned fast and zipped back into the zoo, where the alert was telling us that the breach was in the main admin building, right at the main entrance. I told Roger what I was thinking as we drove. The zoo was to be black, so he was to let me out in the darkness before he drove the extra 150 metres to the building with the alarm. We got to the main gate, I got out, and it was a still warm night, and I stalked to my left along a cycle track, through some trees, and past the hire centre where visitors can hire bikes for the day. I crossed the main car park in pitch blackness. It was dark and quiet and very still. Roger continued motoring to the main admin building, and as he slowed to a stop, he hit his high beams. Right in front of me, beside a large LPG tank against the admin building, a man stood up. It was him. I was unarmed and so stunned that all I could do was say, "Malcolm, it's me." Naden was finally captured after police used sniffer dogs and captured him in Gloucester outside his bush cabin. He is reported to have said in this moment, "Thank God it's over, I have had enough." Chuck, the police dog who ultimately was the one to discover Naden, was hailed a hero. Chuck bit Naden's legs, and when he was arrested he was limping. When he was arrested, he was taken in for questioning. The detectives had to prove that Naden had actually killed Christy and Letitia, and so when they asked him about the murders, Naden then replied with, "I don't want to talk about the murders right now." And it was the words "right now" that made the detectives believe that Malcolm was the killer. They knew that Malcolm wouldn't necessarily speak face to face, so they asked Malcolm if they wrote questions, would he then write down the answers? And he did. He gave back a statement that was 25 pages long and full of detail. He wrote everything about the crimes, about what he did, how he felt in the moment, and this goes back to earlier when I said that it was more like a novel than it was a statement. And I have a quote from that statement that I will read to you now. "If it wasn't her, it would have been someone else. I must leave the whys up to a therapist to help me solve these puzzles that have us both questioning and looking for answers. I just know something went wrong somewhere, and I am unable to put my finger on it. It seems as though I must have my own search party, plumb the depths of myself, and see what it uncovers." In his 25-page confession, he quotes the Bible and a quote from the Clint Eastwood film The Unforgiven. It's really distressing. It's almost like he felt he was writing a horror story. He's really detached from the crimes that he's committed. And the crimes that he committed was against his cousin, and Christy was actually his other cousin's girlfriend. So it's all family members, but still he can't bring himself to feel any remorse about what he's done. It just truly does feel that he's written a horrible story. It's really creepy. I'd like to say I feel something for the victims, but it would be a lie. It was a straightforward court case. Malcolm Naden pled guilty to 2 counts of murder and other crimes, which other crimes I'm presuming is the 12-year-old girl. It's said that Malcolm Naden was incredibly anxious when the judge was giving sentencing, but when the judge said life in prison, Malcolm Naden sat down and was incredibly calm. He actually gave a sigh of relief. The courts actually realised that Malcolm Naden wanted to be sentenced to a life in prison. So I hate that Malcolm Naden actually got his way. Yes, he will be behind bars for the rest of his life, but that's what he wanted. And that makes me sick, because he didn't just kill 2 beautiful young girls with families, he also killed all of those animals and stole from all the people during his run. And now he gets exactly what he wanted. After he was sentenced, investigators went to where Letitia was buried and found a few of her bones. Until Letitia's remains were found, the family actually did not want to believe that Malcolm Naden could have actually done this. They had read his statement and they thought it was more a horror story than reality. However, when they had found Letitia's bones, they realised that every single detail of his 25-page confession was true. Letitia's family intend to lay Letitia to rest once they have found the rest of her remains. Malcolm's final words on his crimes were, "Reliving it has drained me mentally, emotionally. I feel like I have nothing. My head understands the awful truth of what I have done, but my emotions won't engage." So that is the wild case of Malcolm Naden. The fact that he went on the run for 6.5 years is insane. And I think he is one of the most scary people that we have covered so far, because he had no motive. He just wanted to kill people. That from the age of 12 years old, he aspired to be a serial killer. And I think that that is just frightening, that a child who normally would say they want to be a police officer, a wife, a mother, father, wanted to be a serial killer. And the fact that he then went off in later years and became that is terrifying. I don't know what to say about this case because I have no idea of his upbringing. I have no idea if something triggered him as a child, and I have no idea if therapy at a young age would have been a good option, because all we have to go on is that he said he wanted to be a serial killer. Now, that is enough that he should have gone for therapy. But I don't know what other red flags there were in Malcolm Naden's childhood. Let me know your thoughts on this case. If you haven't heard of Malcolm Naden before today, please let me know that in the comments as well, because I hadn't heard about this case until Dave told me. If you have any recommendations, please pop them below. But for now, that is all from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.